Hi everyone, it's NUSensei here. I'm outside my club at the moment. I'm just having a bit of a break, and I wanted to take this chance to reflect on a recent video by Kaminski. And I really love this video. It's the 5 common mistakes which recurve shooters make, and I just really loved it. It's a high quality, high-end video because it comes from someone who obviously has been in game for a long time and able to pinpoint all the lazy habits that us recurve shooters have. And the reason I liked it is it basically got me to a T. I probably ticked off 4.5 out of the 5 things that he labeled, and it was an amazing discussion. So if you haven't already seen it, check it out. I'll link it here or here. And definitely do check out this channel. It's growing immensely, and it's got some very good high-end Olympic recurve material and overall general training as well. So definitely check him out. Now, when it comes to me, rather than make a similar video covering the same things, I want to approach it from the other side, or the other end. Obviously, Jake is a very successful archer, he's a very successful coach, he's an Olympic medalist. I'm one of those like bottom feeders in the bottom 10%, kind of like I'm there to fill out numbers rather than win medals. So I approach archery from quite a different point of view. And in many cases, people hold it against me. People say, oh, you've been shooting for 8 years, why do you suck so much? Where are your medals, where are your trophies? Why haven't you won anything? Why is your rating so low? You know, and so on and so on. It gets a little nasty sometimes. People sometimes want to own my process and expect me at a certain level, but I'm not there yet. And the key point is yet. It doesn't mean I can't do it. It doesn't mean I haven't yet done so. The thing with this angle is that I'm not an elite athlete. In fact, I would say that I've crashed into every hurdle along the way. And hence the topic of this video is the barriers which archers might find themselves coming across on their road to success. I'm not going to pretend that I'm an elite athlete telling you what to do to become an elite athlete. I'm someone speaking from the bottom, trying to encourage you on how to reach the next level. And I believe that I can give you this perspective with honesty and authentic experience. So think of this as, for some people, a reality check, but for others, a challenge to rise above. The first barrier is commitment. I'm talking about finance, I'm talking about effort, but especially time. Archery requires time to improve. All sports require dedicated training and time to train if you want to get somewhere. Like with most sports, if you want to do it casually, you don't have to commit that much time. But archery can be tricky for many people because you approach it like an activity. It's a one-off thing. You can hit the target at 10 meters. You don't need to really train to do better than that. But because of that, people lull themselves into thinking, I only have to go once a week, shoot when I feel like it and when I want to relax, and I'll be okay in the end. The reality is a lot different. You do need to commit time to improving. And I'll say this just outright. Once a week is not going to be enough to improve. It will barely be enough to maintain your current skill level. And what will happen is that each time you come back the following week, you will forget what you've learned. And then you will start again and you try and figure things out. You're trying to figure out the basics, your stance, your finger position, your grip, your back tension. These things actually don't stay with you. And some styles, especially recurve, compound to a lesser extent, but recurve especially requires continual maintenance of your form. If you take a week off or a few days off, you will deteriorate. Some people want to deny this and go, oh, I'll be fine, it's like riding a bike. Yes, to an extent, you may recover a base level of proficiency, but you will not push through and become better if you cannot commit time. Unfortunately, this is where the age thing does come in. Now, age is not a barrier in itself. You can do archery well into your 40s, well into your 50s, well into your 60s. People who tend to enter the sport quite young will stay in there for a long time. But many people like myself will start later. I was in my 20s when I started, and unlike young people who were in their teens when they started, archery was not a strong part of my life, and in many ways it still isn't. So for me to commit time out of my life, out of my work life and my personal life and my social life, to commit to training 3, 4, 5 days a week, that's something which I will struggle with. If I was younger or I started younger, I have less things to do and less burdens and less obligations, I may find it easier to get into a regular training routine and a regular training habit. But as an adult starting late, this is a personal challenge where I will have to make time. And many people find it very hard to juggle work, family, relationships, and so on. So that's the barrier number one, is not being able to commit. It's even if you want to commit, it's not being able to. The second barrier is a lack of motivation, and I'll tie this to having a lack of a goal. I think we can all agree that if you have something to aim for, then you're more likely to push yourself to train harder and reach the next level. Now, many people who enter archery will do so on a recreational basis, and that's completely fine, of course. If you want to do it for fun, you do it for fun. When you do it for fun though, your enjoyment comes from the social aspect, just getting out, having a shot, and unless you are trying to win something or get a certain score or be the personal best, you don't really have a drive or reason to do better. And this is something I raised with my own club here. We run regular shoots, but there's no consequence, there's no reward for it. So you shoot around, you score, so what? There weren't any trophies, there weren't any medals, there were no badges, there was no progression record. So if you shot really well one day and really poorly another, no one cares because there's no tangible benefit. So often people don't turn up because there's no need to shoot. It's just a formal scored shoot, and if scores don't matter, why do it? And because people don't turn up, these events don't run, and so on. The people who want to do this don't have the chance to, and it's a lack of motivation, because why shoot better if there's no need to shoot better? In contrast, when I went for the Indoor World Series earlier this year, even though I was nowhere near prepared, I wasn't skilled enough to compete at top tier, I set that goal for myself, and I found myself wanting to train every day. This is something I haven't really done before. Even for club shoots that happen once a week or once every 2 weeks, I don't feel motivated to train for them because there's no accountability. Here, I'm putting money into traveling and accommodation. I'm putting effort into turning up and risking my reputation in front of people. But that was actually such a positive drive. I wanted to at least hit the target when I went to a world event. And that was something which got me into training every day I could. If not here, then in my backyard. If not in my backyard, then doing physical training or SPTs. Something to maintain continuity. And I never did this when there wasn't an event on. Now I'm training 3, 4, 5 days in a row, and I feel amazing. I got that routine because I'm aiming for another event. And that sort of thing is a positive motivation. It is like, I want to do this, and I want to make sure I can do this, and therefore my mind is set into constant training. So for many of us who don't have that motivation, I strongly encourage you to find it. If your club has competitions, do them. Don't go, oh, I'm not good enough. You don't know you're not good enough until you do it. And if you're not good enough, that should be a motivation for you to practice and learn, expand your skills and train more, so you do have the confidence to do more competitions. Motivation cannot be underrated. If you don't find it through internal, intrinsic benefits, find something external. Find something shiny to compete for. And if you can find that motivation, then you are more likely to find success in your journey. Number 3 can be a very hard thing to work around, and that is access or accessibility. In many cases, we simply need a place to shoot, and it might be a club or a range. Now, this can be a limiting factor if your club doesn't open in the hours you need it and you can't access it outside of those hours. For example, my club, we're kind of stuck on a Tuesday, Thursday and weekend schedule. So if I'm going to train on a Monday or a Wednesday, I can't use the field. It's right there, but I can't use it. It's such a shame because I might want to practice at 50 meters or 70 meters, but I can't unless it's on those days. But there are ways to work around that. I can shoot short distance in the shed or in here, and people say, why do you shoot 20 meters? It might be all I have. but 20 meters is more than enough for form training. So there are ways to work around it. Now, I'm fortunate in that case because I do have a range close to where I live and close to where I work. For many of us, that's just not the case. We just don't have the space to do so. We might make spaces. We might find a place in our garage or in our own property, or we find a place to practice in our factory at work. And people should be commended for being creative and persistent in making practice spaces. Again, a lot of us just can't do that. So I can commend and respect people who are trying but just can't do it. Same thing happens with the lack of access to coaches. That's a really big problem in some places. In fact, when I meet people in real life, I meet them here in Melbourne or elsewhere in Sydney, they tell me that there just isn't enough coaches. The club doesn't have a coach, or the club doesn't have enough coaches and only a few people can access it. And a lot of people want to improve but can't. I know in other places like in the US, there's a find my coach function where you can find a coach, hopefully nearby. I think the UK has one as well, but Australia largely doesn't have one. So because we're so big and we're so spread out, you might not have a venue that has a coach or a coach that can reach you, or you simply can't find one. That is really, really hard, and I do encourage you to find as many resources as you can, whether online or written or elsewhere, but that can be a big limiting factor, and hopefully there are ways for you to work around that. Number 4 on my list would be volunteer burnout. I mentioned at the beginning about commitments. Well, this is overcommitment, but not for a personal reason, but to the club. And this is very much a problem faced by nearly every grassroots club. It's easy to criticize me if you don't run a club yourself. If you have an elite training program or you have all the time in the world to train at your club, beautiful. I can't envy you. I want you to do your best. But if you want to come at me and say, oh, you're so bad, well, you do what I do. Take over my job, take over my position, you run this every day or every week and let me train then. And that's kind of how we feel sometimes. As a coach, as an instructor, as a board member, as a judge or an official, most of your time is spent towards other people. It's spent on the club and helping new guys get into the sport. And there is a massive benefit, no doubt. You know, people say, oh, why don't you do better? I would like to do better, but sometimes getting 20 new people to love archery is just as good a result. Getting 200 people a month into archery can be fantastic and rewarding in itself. But that commitment takes time. It drains volunteers. And many clubs will find themselves pressing new people who just joined the club to help out in some way, to be instructors. And when this happens, you take away their shooting time, their archery time. And that can be extremely detrimental to their passion and commitment to the sport. I'll probably speak about this in more detail in a different video, but the weight that you get when you are in that position is something which will kill your passion sooner or later. And the rock bottom of my mindset was I would come to the club, I would drive to my club and not even bring my gear because I knew I would have zero time to do any archery. And when you reach that point, then it's no wonder people drop out. My message for you and for clubs is to protect your volunteers. Don't let them burn out. Don't overburden them. For some people or some clubs, you might want to cut down on the activities you run to give your people a chance to recharge and to let them enjoy the archery they signed up for and to let them train and progress if that is their goal. Often having your volunteers excel in archery is in itself a motivation for other people, rather than pressing them into becoming instructors and spending time that could be better spent on themselves. Number 5 on my list is a lack of support, and this can mean a lot of things and it ties into what we said before, but to me support is having the right people and the right environment to help you. Archery is an individual sport. It is a solo sport. It's why a lot of us love it, including myself, but sometimes you want to be alone with other people, and that's kind of what we're missing sometimes. A lot of people don't really understand what the appeal to archery is. You stand there and you shoot things. It's so boring to watch, and they'd rather watch football or cricket or tennis or something which is more exciting. But archery is unique in many ways, and the people who enjoy archery want to enjoy it but find it hard to share it with other people. Similarly, if you don't have people support you in your journey, whether it's competitive or not, then that can also be quite daunting. I know for me personally, I want to do archery a bit more competitively, but my family don't get it. My dad will always criticize me, and he means it in a nice way, but it's that Asian parent talk where he's being like harsh and honest, and that's his way of loving me, and I acknowledge that. But it can be really hard for someone's mindset where, I've got this new Olympic bow, I'm trying to push myself to train every day, and it'll shake my head and go, well, it's not a Mongolian bow, so what's the point? And when you hear that all the time, it really eats away at you. You just associate negativity with what you do. And when you're around people who say this, if you're the only one in the club who shoots compound, or the only one who shoots recurve, and people would just make jokes about you and dismiss you, that just cuts you down. And it might be a joke, it might just be a friendly bit of banter, but some people don't take it that way. And that kind of culture and mentality can actually be quite toxic. And many people leave clubs because of the behavior of other people. And the club can't support new archers, and the club is failing. And no wonder people are leaving archery and dropping out, because they don't come to a happy place. They don't come to a place where there are training partners who want to turn up, who want to be coached, who want to learn, who want to teach. When you're missing those people, then there's no motivation, there's no reason to turn up. I'm by myself today. Why should I push myself when there's no one to hold me accountable? I can train for 5 hours right now and no one will know and no one will care. I can go home and dad will go, so where'd you go? All right, if there's no passion from other people, no support, then that too can be a very big barrier. As much as we are self-motivated and we do it for individual reasons, we are human, and humans are going to want that validation from somebody else. That well done, good job, I'm proud of you. And if we don't get that, that can be another reason, one more reason, or the straw that breaks that back to break our passion and our love for archery. Anyway, those are my 5 barriers to success. It's a bit cynical, I know, but I hope that this is an honest reflection of where I come from. And I know a lot of you will have these experiences too. And for those of us who've lost our way, we've dropped out of it, I hope that hearing somebody else speak about this can motivate you to look past this, to break past this barrier, to overcome the hurdle that got you out of archery and to get you back in. What are your thoughts? What are your barriers? Post your thoughts below. Thank you for letting me share my experiences and speak honestly. I hope you found this helpful and motivating in your own way. I'm NUSensei. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time.